I was walking around near the mall, and there's a bike trail that is really beautiful and runs from the Fayetteville Mall underneath the road next to the mall and connects to Lake Fayetteville. And I made another video about that experience that day, and it's a pretty view. But what I didn't mention in that video is that I also had an experience with poor infrastructure there. So the bike path goes kind of a little bit more of the long way around. And as I was coming back to my car, I thought, well, I don't really want to follow the bike path, which is going to lead all the way down to the far end of the parking lot. I just want to cut across and follow the main road and then go to the go back to my car that way. And I realized that there really just is not good infrastructure at all. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can pull it up and I'll show you here on the map, just because I thought it was really interesting. Really interesting to see this because I'm a fan of city builders. I'm a fan of cities in general. And so to see an example of just really bad infrastructure is kind of intriguing. So, all right, so here we go. So there you can see we have the mall, right? Got the mall right there. And so I parked like right around in this area, right? I park in there, and then I went in and I was at the food court and stuff here. So good stuff. And then I'd walked all the way down here across this empty parking lot where the JCPenney used to be. And I went down this trail, which goes underneath that road, and then it makes its way along that tree line and to the lake, which is a pretty lake. Nice view. Anyway, this is what I'm talking about. So I go over here and I go underneath the road there, underneath the main highway, and that's great. But right about here in this open space, I think to myself, well, if I want to get back to the parking lot over there, I'd rather just go along the main road and go to the parking lot in the mall that way, rather than going all the way down this trail the long way around, like a big U-shaped path if I followed the trail. So I walk along the grass here, and you would think that that little gray area there is a sidewalk, but it's actually not a sidewalk. It's a drainage ditch for water. And it's dry during the summer, so you could kind of walk along that if you wanted to, but I was thinking, well, that's fine. I'll just walk in the grass. It's fine. There's no sidewalk. But then we get over here, and we have this weird intersection. And so I get up here, and I realize, well, wait a second. Like, there's no crosswalks here. Like, there's no crosswalks of any kind. Like, there's absolutely no provision on any level for a pedestrian to cross there or a pedestrian to cross there. There's just no crossing options, and there's like a kind of steep hill there. So I guess I could totally have just walked up the side of the hill, but I had wanted to cross there. So then I kind of just sort of ran across there, and then a car started turning into there, and then somebody honked at me, and I kind of scurried out of the road, and it was just this awkward kind of a thing. And I just wanted to get from there back to the parking lot. And I thought, that is so crazy, because if you look at it more, like over here, you got sidewalks there, right? You got crosswalks, you got businesses of various sorts. Over here, we've got various kinds of sidewalks, right? But then Like there's no way, like even the next road over. So what if you're a pedestrian? Like people live here, right? So there's apartments. Let's say you live in those apartments. And then you decide, okay, I want to walk over here to this Barnes and Noble. All right, nope, no trouble. There's sidewalks all around there. You could do that. That would work all right. But then you want to cross this main highway? Well, I guess there's no way to do it. I mean, like there just is no way. Like if you're a pedestrian, other than that bike path, there's no way to cross the street. So you have, 8 or 10 lanes, which are just impassable for a pedestrian. And I would understand that to some degree if we're talking about like a rural country road somewhere, but we're talking about a major arterial next to the largest and, well, only mall in the Bentonville, Rogers, Fayetteville area. And so, it's a safety issue, right? Like I was thinking about it because I had just been at the DMV earlier that day getting my license and registration and all of that stuff done. And there's a TV up on the wall there at the DMV, and it was saying 71 people. Well, wait, no, every 71 minutes, a pedestrian gets run over and killed somewhere. Like, I don't know if that's like in the United States or what, but, like it's important for people to watch out for each other, right? But it's also important that we engage in intelligent design decisions which don't put people in a bad situation, right? Like if you have cars going different places and then you have a pedestrian, well, what is the pedestrian going to do, right? I mean, the pedestrian's probably going to just wait until they think they see a gap and then run across the road. Because, no one's trying to do anything crazy. It's just, if you don't design with provision for the human element, then you're going to potentially put people at risk, kind of like me, and because I don't know any better, and I don't realize that this is a no crosswalk kind of a situation. So I'm like running across there thinking like, I didn't realize that there's not going to be any crosswalks in front of the road at the mall, right? And that leads to the question of, do we build cities which are too car centric? And I think that people go too much, off the deep end sometimes when they're angry at people driving cars. They're like, well, everybody should just be, bicycling everybody everywhere and walking everywhere and riding public transportation everywhere. Well, no, not necessarily. But it's also true that if you don't design inclusion into a society, it can create problems. And I think in Arkansas, as I come down here, this is a much older part of the country than Washington or even to some degree Montana. Like you have to think about the fact that infrastructure is built at different times in history, and there's a lot of things that were, pretty much unchanged from the Civil War days, right? Like Arkansas is not a new state in the Union. It's been in the country for longer than a lot of the other states. So some of these cities are more defined by standards which are older, like probably not in the 1800s, but a lot of these roads and things are probably, maybe this mall, I don't know, when was this mall made? Like, I don't know. It probably was, it might have been opened in the 50s, right? And at that time, you know, was there a focus on having things like sidewalks and having, you know, wheelchair ramps and stuff? You know, I was looking at another restaurant while I was driving down the road, and I just realized, you know, like there's not even any wheelchair ramps at the end of the sidewalks. So like if a person wanted to get in, like, and they had a wheelchair, they probably couldn't get in there, you know? Like that kind of stuff is just, you're more likely to see that kind of stuff in Arkansas than you would in some of the more modern cities on the West Coast, where I think there's, you know, a little bit more standards when it comes to some of this stuff. But when I look at a road like this, it's kind of like it's a freeway, but it's not really a freeway, right? Because it's going right through the middle of town, you know? But when you have a road like that, then you have these situations where people have to drive everywhere. And like, what happens if you're in, you know, what happens if you're in this business here and then you want to come out and you want to go next door? Like, there's no sidewalk, so you're going to have to like walk through the grass, or you're going to get into your car and then you're going to have to make a left turn across traffic to go the other way. And then it's producing more congestion and things like that. So there's just a lot of bad design things that I was looking at. And I thought, you know, I don't know if it's really relevant to this channel necessarily, other than it was just something kind of interesting I was thinking about. You know, and we talk a lot about philosophy on this channel, and so kind of to tie it all together, I think it's interesting how sometimes we blame the person when it's actually the environment which is producing a bad result. Just like the pedestrian walking across the street in an unapproved place where there is no crosswalk. Well, is it the problem of the pedestrian that's not following the rules, or is it a problem that you didn't put a sidewalk there and you didn't put a crosswalk there, and it left a person without a really good option? You know, when we think about life from the perspective of being in someone else's shoes, it helps a lot. Maybe you drive everywhere, but there are some people who want to be able to bike places or walk places. And I also think it's interesting how we can create solutions which are really good, right? Like Northwest Arkansas has a lot of bike trails. I love that. That's one of the best things I've discovered about the Bentonville, Rogers, Fayetteville metro area since I've gotten here. It's that there's bike paths everywhere. So it's very possible to bike places in a pretty convenient way. But then there's other things like what I was just describing, where you go to a place and you realize, oh, wait, like there is no sidewalk in this particular area. So you have a desire to be inclusive mixed with a desire to maybe not change or not evolve. And consistency is very important, because if you're not consistent, then that can detract from the good that you do, right? Like you built an amazing bike path, but then you forgot to put up a crosswalk by the mall, right? Like, how do you do that? You know, I saw in the Reddit for Bentonville that apparently there is a big debate going on about a bike mural. And, you know, let me see if I can find that, because it's an interesting thing. So, yep. Right. So here's the page on Reddit, anyway, if you look at it, you can see that's the mural underneath a bridge, and apparently it's creating some sort of a big debate at city council meetings and stuff, because somebody looked at this and for some reason they thought it looks like it's got a pride flag concealed in it, or a trans flag or something, probably because there's like some kind of pink and blue stripes up in there or something. So like just imagine, you know, like that's where we're at, that we would decide you got a mural, right, underneath a bridge. Nobody cares. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. It's fine. It's just a bike mural. And somebody's going to look at that and say, oh, well, I think that looks like some kind of a, you know, it could be concealing some sort of pride artwork. You know, like that's a great example of where, yeah, if you have activist left behavior where like everything is being completely, you know, over the top, filled with pride imagery, and like everywhere you go, it's a huge thing. And it's in your face and stuff, like, yeah, you can go too far with like including fringe stuff. But then when you go the other direction, you have people making a mountain out of a molehill, thinking that they're going to, you know, make something like this bike mural the hill they die on, because they're terrified of something that could possibly look a little bit like it's being inclusive to people of a different sexual orientation. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous, you know. And what I would say is, from my time being here and observing what the town is like, it's not really an uninclusive community. It's not the kind of a place where you have a bunch of bigots and things like that. Are there some? Certainly there are, clearly. That being said, though, there's also a lot more diversity than anything that I experienced in Montana. In Montana, you never see black people. You never see really Asian people. You never see anybody other than just white people. And being half Asian myself, you know, like, it's kind of isolating when there's not anybody that doesn't just look like, you know, white people, right? It feels, you know, kind of hard to be part of a community where there are no minorities, right? There's no diversity of any kind. So it's nice to see, like, there's people speaking different languages. There's Latina people, there's Asians, there's I see Middle Easterners, African Americans. There's just, you know, a wide range of all different kinds of people around. And so the area here feels a lot more inclusive, a lot more diverse than anything in Montana. But then you also have like some people in a city council meeting that have nothing better to do than to cause a scene because they think that a bike mural underneath a bridge is some sort of a gay pride symbol, and they're you know, made uncomfortable by it. You know, and I can't help but think, like, if people are always talking about the gay stuff, and they're always freaking out about the gay stuff, and they're always, you know, making a huge issue out of, you know, God forbid that there's somebody waving a flag that offends them. You know, at some point you kind of got to wonder, like, why is that such a big deal? Like, if it's being shoved in your face and you're forced to consume, you know, a lot of content you don't want to consume, then yeah, I get that. But if you're just, completely paranoid about it and you're trying to make a huge issue out of those kinds of things, then, that probably reflects something, something weird. Like maybe if people are extremely homophobic, maybe they're closeted homosexuals themselves on some level. Like they're on a spectrum of not being 100% straight and they don't like it, and so it's like some kind of self-loathing. I don't know. All I know is like it doesn't seem like as long as it's not being a big thing that's being made out of it, I don't care really, so once I find people that like to constantly be talking about that stuff, and like the main thing that they want to talk about is like making fun of gays and trans people or whatever, like that gets mighty old, and I'm not into it. But anyways, the point I was getting at though is like you have these weird dichotomies where you have inclusion and exclusion side by side. You have progress, and then you have things stuck in the past. You have the bike lanes, and you have no crosswalks. You have people with progressive worldviews, and then you have people that are bigots right next door. Like life is filled with that stuff, and that's okay, but maybe it's just important to focus on the good, right? Because I can not like it that there's not a crosswalk in some places or a sidewalk missing here or there, but I guess I have the choice. Do I focus on that, or do I focus on the things I do love, like the fact that I could, bicycle all over the area and take in the scenery, and you do a little bit of homework and study exactly where you can actually go. There's a lot you can do as a pedestrian in Northwest Arkansas. So, I guess that's what I'd close on. Accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative in your worldview. Don't focus so much on the things that are not quite right. Focus on the things that are good. And if you are doing something though, try to design systems which are frictionless. Design things which factor in the human element, because many times if we focus on experiences that other people are going to have, and we say, well, what is their experience going to be like? Then it becomes very obvious that some of the things that we're doing really aren't quite good enough. It's like I was thinking about the launch of Cities Skylines 2, and like there's weird things, like you play the game and then there's snow in the game and the snow gets on the car's windshields, but then there's no texture to eliminate the snow from their windshields when they're driving. So you have in this game cars driving around with snow covering their windshields, like that's just kind of weird. Like that looks lazy, right? Like when you're a player, you see it and you think, oh my goodness, like why would you not fix that? If you were a developer, and if you're a developer, you're probably just working long hours trying to produce a result that's going to be passable, like you're not thinking about it from the perspective of the player. But once you are, then it becomes painfully obvious what you kind of are missing. So it's important to say, let me think about life from the perspective of the other person on the other side of the table, and then ask that question, am I doing what is right for others, or am I just doing what looks good on paper when in reality it's not really helping other people in the way I think it should. We should always try to have a spirit of service, and that service should always come from a place of love. When you do what you do because you're trying to be loving to others, and because you love the experience of making people's lives or making their day better, that's really what makes a difference in design, in leadership, in social politics, all of it. It all comes back to love, because when we do things that we love, when we love the things that we do, then we tend to make wise choices instead of just trying to do something that is technically correct but hollow. in spirit. As always, best luck on your adventure. Till next time, thanks so much for watching.